The beginning was too good to be true. I never thought I'd end up telling this story. Maybe it's because it still feels raw, even after months. Or maybe it's because part of me still hopes that saying it out loud will make it make sense. Either way, here it is, the story of how I lost the person I thought I'd grow old with. When I first met Emily, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I had just turned 30, my previous relationship had burned out after 5 years, and I'd sworn I'd take a break from dating. But life, apparently, doesn't care much about your plans. We met at a small art gallery in downtown Seattle. My friend Noah had dragged me there because one of his colleagues was exhibiting some abstract photography. I remember standing there, staring at a picture of a cracked mirror, trying to look like I understood it, when I heard someone next to me say, "Looks like my self-esteem after a bad date." I laughed before I even looked at her. She had that kind of presence that fills a room quietly. No effort, no performance. Wavy brown hair, messy bun, oversized sweater, and a camera hanging from her neck. Emily was a freelance photographer. She told me she loved capturing moments people don't notice but will remember later. I told her I was a designer who spent too much time worrying about color palettes and font choices. We laughed, and it felt easy. That night, I walked her home in the drizzle. Seattle rain always feels like it's whispering something, soft and cold, and that night, it whispered something to me. I didn't know what yet, but I knew I wanted to see her again. Our first real date was coffee at a small cafe near Pike Place Market. We ended up staying there for 4 hours, talking about everything from childhood memories to the ethics of social media. She told me about her parents, divorced when she was 12, and how that made her terrified of commitment. I told her about mine, still together after 35 years, and how that made me obsessed with finding the real thing. We joked that together we were a balance of cynicism and hope. Within a month, we were inseparable. She'd come over to my apartment with her laptop, edit photos while I worked on design mock-ups, and we'd share playlists. Her laugh became the background music of my evenings. She loved small things, cooking pasta from scratch, feeding stray cats behind our building, watching old movies with subtitles. She hated loud bars, fake smiles, and people who interrupted others mid-sentence. I fell for all of it. 6 months in, I realized I'd never felt calmer around someone. I used to think love was supposed to be chaos, fireworks and fights and drama. With Emily, it was quiet, steady, real. She didn't demand constant attention. She just existed beside me, and that felt like peace. We moved in together after a year. My apartment was small but cozy. We painted the living room a pale green she called sage. I just called it green, and she filled the shelves with framed photos and tiny plants. Every Sunday morning, we made pancakes and read from the same newspaper section, competing to find the funniest typo. It was domestic bliss, and I didn't even realize how rare that was. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that peace sometimes hides warning signs you refuse to see. The first crack appeared about a year and a half in. It was small, barely noticeable. Emily had started getting more photography gigs, some of them out of town. I was proud of her. She was finally getting recognition. But she'd come home tired, distracted, glued to her phone. When I asked who she was texting, she'd smile and say, "Just clients, babe." One night, she came back from Portland later than expected. Her car smelled faintly of cologne, not hers, not mine. When I mentioned it, she laughed it off. I gave a ride to a model from the shoot. "Don't worry, old man." She kissed me, and I let it go. Because that's what trust looks like, right? You let it go. We went on like that for months. Me convincing myself everything was fine, her growing busier, her phone always face down on the table. Once, she left for a weekend trip to L.A. for a creative workshop. I asked if I could come along. She said, "It's just boring stuff, babe. You'd hate it." She was probably right. But still, something in her tone made my chest tighten. Then came the night everything shifted, though I didn't know it at the time. We were having dinner, takeout sushi, because neither of us felt like cooking. She got a message, glanced at her phone, and smiled. Not her usual smile, the one she gave me. This one was smaller, private. I asked, half joking, "Who's making you smile like that?" She froze for a fraction of a second before saying, "Just my friend Liam from the workshop. Chill, jealous man." She laughed, tossed her hair, changed the subject. I laughed too, but inside, something cold started to grow. A single name, Liam, stuck in my mind like a splinter. That night, when she fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself not to be the insecure boyfriend who reads too much into things. But the next morning, when she left for a shoot, I found myself glancing at her phone on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. Not that day. But the thought stayed. A few weeks later, she seemed different. Distant. She still said she loved me, but her hugs felt lighter. She laughed less. Sometimes she'd look at me like she was searching for something, and when she didn't find it, she'd turn away. I tried to fix it, planned weekend trips, surprised her with coffee, even wrote her a letter like we were teenagers again. She smiled when she read it, said I was too sweet. Then she went back to scrolling through her phone. The distance grew until one night she told me she was going to Portland again. Same client, she said. Same hotel. She kissed me goodbye at the door, but this time, she didn't look back. I spent that weekend alone, replaying every conversation we'd had in the past month, searching for clues I'd missed. The laughter that used to echo through our apartment was replaced by silence. Even the plants she loved started to wilt. And on the third night, when she still hadn't texted me back, I finally gave in. I opened her laptop. Inside her email, I found a draft folder. The first message began with, "Hey Liam, I know I shouldn't be writing this, but I miss you." That's where I stopped reading. I closed the laptop and sat there, staring at my reflection in the black screen. My hands were shaking. My chest felt hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat, realizing that the woman I'd trusted more than anyone was slowly slipping away, and maybe had already gone. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe miss you meant something innocent. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I already knew. That night, I didn't sleep. And in the morning, when I heard her key turn in the lock, I pretended everything was fine. Because sometimes love doesn't end with a fight. Sometimes it just fades, and you keep pretending until you can't anymore. The lie between us. When Emily came home that morning, the air felt heavier than usual. She smiled like nothing was wrong, set her bag down, and kissed me on the cheek. I kissed her back, pretending I hadn't read the one line that shattered my peace. "Traffic was awful," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Remind me never to drive back from Portland on a Sunday night." I nodded, forcing a smile. My throat felt dry. I wanted to ask her about Liam right then, to pull the truth out of her. But instead, I said, "Glad you're home. We had breakfast together. Eggs, toast, orange juice. Normal things. Too normal." She talked about the photos she took, how she met a client who wanted her to shoot a wedding next month. I tried to listen, but every word blurred. All I could hear was that single sentence echoing in my mind. "I miss you." When she left for a shower, I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass of juice. My chest felt tight. I didn't want to be the kind of man who spies on his partner, but I also couldn't live with that gnawing doubt. I told myself I'd give it time. A week, maybe two. If things didn't change, I'd confront her. That was my first mistake. Over the next few days, Emily was perfectly herself again. She made dinner, sent me memes, curled up next to me on the couch. She even started planning a short trip for the two of us to the Oregon coast. If I hadn't seen that email, I would have believed everything was perfect. But now, every smile felt suspicious. Every "I love you" sounded like an apology I hadn't heard yet. One night, while she was editing photos in the living room, I caught a glimpse of her phone lighting up with a message. The screen flashed, "Liam, new message." Her fingers froze for half a second before she picked up the phone and turned it face down. "Spam?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too fast. I didn't push it. I just nodded and went back to pretending to work on my laptop, while my heart pounded like a drum. That night, I barely slept again. I lay next to her, watching her chest rise and fall, wondering if she was dreaming about him. The next morning, she told me she'd be gone for the day. "Another client shoot," she said. I smiled, told her good luck, then waited 15 minutes after she left before opening her laptop again. The same email draft folder. Same unsent letters. But now, there were more. I can't stop thinking about that night in Portland. He doesn't suspect anything. Sometimes I feel guilty. Sometimes I don't. You make me feel like myself again. My stomach turned. There it was. The confirmation I didn't want but couldn't ignore. I closed the laptop and just sat there, trying to breathe. The first thought that hit me wasn't anger, it was disbelief. She'd always been the honest one. She'd told me once that cheating was the one thing she could never forgive. And now here she was, doing exactly that. My second thought was, why didn't she just leave me? If she'd fallen out of love, she could have said it. I would have been heartbroken, sure, but I would have respected her honesty. Instead, she chose silence, and silence hurts more than the truth ever could. That evening, she came home humming softly, holding a cup of coffee from our favorite cafe. She kissed my forehead, called me love, and started talking about some new project. I listened barely. At one point, she noticed I was quiet. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." She smiled, reached over, and brushed my hair back. "Don't overwork yourself. You always do that." Her touch used to comfort me. That night, it made me sick. I excused myself, went to the balcony, and just stood there watching the rain. I thought about confronting her, about asking who Liam really was, but every scenario I imagined ended in either denial or tears. I wasn't ready for either. Instead, I decided I'd wait one more week. I needed to be sure. I needed proof she couldn't talk her way out of. So I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a small tracker app on her laptop. Nothing invasive, just something that synced her emails to a backup folder. I told myself it was for closure, not revenge. But the truth is, I just wanted to know how long she'd been lying. 3 days later, I got my answer. An email draft dated 2 months back. Subject line, "I can't keep pretending." The message said, "He's good to me, but I feel like I'm living someone else's life. I love him, but not the way I used to. When I'm with you, I feel alive. I wish things were different." That was it. 2 months. She'd been halfway gone for 2 whole months while making me breakfast, kissing me goodnight, saying, "I love you." I don't know how long I sat there after reading that. My body felt cold. My mind went blank. There's a kind of pain that doesn't even make you cry. It just empties you out completely. When Emily came home that night, I acted normal again. I laughed at her jokes, watched a show with her, even kissed her goodnight. But something in me had already broken. I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. I just needed to choose the right moment. One that wouldn't end in shouting, but in truth. That moment came sooner than I expected. 2 nights later, I walked into the kitchen and saw her standing by the window, phone in hand, whispering. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Yeah, I'll tell him soon," she said. "I promise. I just need time." Then silence. When she turned around and saw me, she froze. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. She blinked, then smiled weakly. "No one. My friend Zoe." "You don't call Zoe baby," I said quietly. Her face went pale. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The kind of silence that ends something. "Liam?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her lips trembled, and that was enough. I nodded once, walked past her to the bedroom, and closed the door. She didn't follow. I sat on the bed, staring at the floor, waiting for anger to come, but it didn't. All I felt was numbness. It's strange how betrayal doesn't explode. It seeps. It fills the quiet corners first, then takes over everything. Outside, rain started again. Same whispering drizzle as the night I met her. Only this time, it didn't sound romantic. It sounded like the world laughing at me. I thought about the first time she said she loved me. I thought about the morning pancakes, the plants, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder while editing photos. All those small things that now felt like evidence in a case I never asked to open. I lay down, closed my eyes, and realized I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. There's no undo button for the truth. The next morning felt unreal. The sun came through the blinds like nothing had happened, but the apartment smelled like guilt, quiet, invisible, heavy. Emily moved around the kitchen in silence, making coffee like she always did. I sat at the table, pretending to read the news on my phone. My hands shook slightly, though I tried to hide it behind the mug. Finally, she spoke. "We need to talk, don't we?" Her voice was small, fragile. I didn't look up. "Yeah, we do." She sat across from me, eyes red, like she hadn't slept. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I never wanted you to find out like that." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it sounded. "There's no good way to find out you've been cheated on, Emily." She flinched. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't plan it. You just what?" I interrupted. "Slipped and fell into someone else's bed." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. "You lied to me for months. Every time you said you loved me, every time you kissed me goodnight, it was a lie. It wasn't, she said quickly, leaning forward. I did love you. I still do. But things changed, and I didn't know how to tell you without breaking you. Well, I said coldly, congratulations. You broke me anyway. She covered her face with her hands, silent for a while. When she finally looked up, she said, it started in Portland. I swear, I didn't mean for it to. We were working late, talking about photography, and it just happened. It was one night. But then we kept talking, and I started feeling things I hadn't felt in a long time. I clenched my fists under the table. And what was I then? Background noise. She shook her head. No, you were safety. You were everything steady and kind. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself in that. I started feeling like I was fading into your world, not living in mine. Her words hit harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew there was some truth to them. I had built a world where we fit perfectly, maybe too perfectly. I wanted things to stay calm, peaceful, predictable. She wanted something alive, uncertain. Still, I said nothing. I know I should have told you, she whispered. But every time I looked at you, I couldn't. You looked at me like I was still the best thing in your life, and I couldn't destroy that. But you did, I said, just quietly. We sat there for a long time, staring at each other across the table like strangers who used to know each other well. Finally, she stood up and said, I'll pack my things. That sentence cut through me like a blade. Part of me wanted to say, yes, leave. The other part wanted to grab her and beg her to stay. But I didn't move. I just watched as she walked to the bedroom, the sound of her suitcase zipping breaking the silence. When she came out, she paused by the door. For what it's worth, she said softly, I never stopped caring about you. I looked up at her and said, then why does it feel like you did? She didn't answer. She just nodded slightly and left. When the door closed, I felt something strange, not rage, not even heartbreak, just emptiness. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. Every object around me carried a memory. Her coffee mug, her sweater on the chair, the plant by the window she swore would never die. I wanted to throw everything out, erase every trace of her. Instead, I sat on the couch, staring at my hands. They looked foreign, like they belonged to someone else, someone naive enough to believe love could fix everything. That night, I drank whiskey straight from the bottle. I don't even like whiskey, but it felt like something I was supposed to do. Some ritual of heartbreak, maybe. I scrolled through our old photos until I couldn't take it anymore. Her smile used to make me happy. Now it just made me feel stupid. I thought about calling Noah, my best friend, but what would I say? Hey, remember how I said Emily was the one? Turns out I was wrong. No, I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I just wanted silence. So I stayed in it. 3 days passed before I heard from her again. A text. I hope you're okay. I didn't want it to end like this. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back. Then why did you make it end like this? She didn't reply. Later that night, I found myself rereading her old messages, the ones before everything fell apart. There was a time when she texted me every morning just to say, I'm proud of you. I realized how much I missed that. Not her, maybe, but the version of me I was when she said it. The days that followed blurred together. I went to work, came home, didn't talk much. My coworkers noticed, but no one asked. Maybe they could sense I wasn't ready to explain. One night, Noah dropped by uninvited. You look like crap, he said, handing me takeout. Talk. I told him everything. The emails, the phone call, the truth. He listened quietly, then said, You didn't deserve that, man. Maybe not, I said. But maybe I wasn't enough. He shook his head. No, she made her choice. Don't turn her mistake into your fault. I wanted to believe him, but guilt has a way of sticking. You start thinking maybe if you'd been more romantic, more attentive, less busy, things would have been different. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Sometimes people leave not because of what you did, but because of what they're looking for inside themselves. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. The pain wasn't just about losing her. It was about losing the future I'd built in my head, the wedding we'd talked about, the house with a garden, the life I thought we were moving toward. I didn't just lose Emily. I lost the version of myself that believed in us. The next morning, I deleted her number. Not out of anger, out of mercy. For both of us. But as the phone screen went black, I couldn't help but whisper to the empty room. I still would have forgiven you if you'd just told me the truth. The silence answered back. After that night, things got quiet between us. Not cold, just uncertain. She still texted sometimes, small things like, "Hope your day's okay," or heard a song that reminded me of you. But the tone had changed. Every message felt like a door she opened halfway, just to see if I was still standing outside. I didn't answer right away most days. Part of me wanted to protect whatever was left of my pride. Another part, the weaker one, wanted to drive to her place and ask what "for now" really meant. A week later, she called. Not texted, called. Her voice was soft, careful. "Hey," she said. "Can we talk?" We met at a little park near the water. The air smelled like rain and cut grass. She wore that same gray hoodie I once teased her about, the one she said she'd never get rid of because it felt like home. She didn't waste time. "Adam and I went out again," she said. It wasn't serious, but it made me realize something. What? That I don't know what I want anymore. Her honesty hit harder than I expected. I'd spent weeks trying to decode her, and now she'd said it plainly. She was lost. I didn't try to fix it. I just nodded. "Okay." She looked frustrated. "That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? That you'll wait?" I laughed quietly. "You know that's not fair." She looked down. "Yeah, I know." For a while we just stood there, listening to the wind move through the trees. Then she said, almost to herself, "I keep thinking about the last time we were together, before we broke up. Do you remember?" "Of course. I still don't know what went wrong," she whispered. "We just stopped choosing each other." That sentence stayed with me. Stopped choosing each other. It was the most honest thing either of us had ever said. After that, we didn't talk for almost 2 months. During that time, I tried to move on. I even went on a few dates, people from apps, mostly. But every time I sat across from someone new, I found myself comparing their laugh, their timing, their way of holding eye contact to hers. Nobody measured up. It wasn't fair to them, but it was the truth. Then one Friday night, she showed up at my apartment. No call, no warning. I opened the door, and there she was, holding a bottle of wine and looking like she'd been crying. "Can I come in?" she asked. We sat on the couch, the wine untouched. She talked for over an hour, about work, her family, how everything felt off. And then she said it. "I keep trying to let you go, but it feels like you're everywhere. In my playlists, in my apartment, even in the way I make coffee." I didn't know if she wanted comfort or confession. I just listened. Finally, she said, "Do you ever feel like we're haunted by what we could have been?" I looked at her. "Every day?" She leaned in, and before I could think, we were kissing again. It wasn't careful this time. It was messy, desperate, full of all the words we never said. When it ended, she whispered, "This isn't helping, is it?" "No," I said, "but it feels like it is." She stayed the night. Not in the romantic, movie kind of way. More like two people holding on to something that was slipping through their fingers. When I woke up, she was sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "You look like you're about to run," I said. "I am," she admitted. And she did. She left quietly, before sunrise. That day, I told myself it was over. For real this time. I even deleted her number, though I knew it by heart. Weeks passed. Life moved on, as it always does. But then strange things started happening. I'd find songs we used to share suddenly popping up on my playlists, even though I hadn't added them. My phone would light up at 2 a.m. No caller ID, and when I answered, there'd be silence. I'd wake from dreams where she was there, saying my name, but when I reached out, she vanished. I told myself it was coincidence, or maybe guilt, but deep down I knew better. She wasn't gone. She was everywhere, just like she'd said. Then one afternoon, I got a call from a mutual friend, Megan. "Hey," she said gently. "I don't know if you've heard, but Emma moved. She took a job in Seattle." Seattle, the opposite side of the country. I didn't say anything for a while. Then I asked, "Did she say goodbye to anyone?" "Not really. She just left. Said she needed a clean start." That night, I sat in my car outside her apartment building for almost an hour. Her window was dark. I knew she wasn't coming back. Before I left, I took one last look at that window, the one I'd stared up at 100 times before, and said quietly, "Goodbye, Em." But even as I drove away, I felt her ghost beside me. Not the kind that scares you, but the kind that lingers in your chest, refusing to leave. In the following weeks, I tried to fill the space she left. I worked longer hours, saw friends I hadn't seen in months, pretended I was fine. But the truth was simple. Some people don't leave your life. They just change the way they exist in it. And then, 3 months later, she called. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew that voice instantly. "Hey," she said quietly. "Don't hang up." I didn't. I couldn't. "I know it's late," she continued. "But I keep thinking about that night at the park. You said you were scared it would fall apart again." "Yeah. I think I finally understand why." "Why?" "Because you were the only person who ever made me feel like home, and that terrified me." I didn't speak. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." And then the line went dead. No goodbye, no promise, nothing. Just silence. I never heard from her again. But sometimes, late at night, I still check my phone, half expecting her name to light up the screen. 6 months passed before I saw her again. I'd convinced myself it was over, that she was gone for good. I'd even started dating someone new. Her name was Lily, a kind woman with a calm presence, the opposite of Emma in almost every way. Lily didn't push or provoke. She just existed gently beside me, like sunlight through a window. But even then, I caught myself searching for shadows. Every time Lily laughed, I remembered how Emma's laugh used to rise uncontrollably when she tried to hide it. Every quiet dinner, every drive home in silence, reminded me of what I'd lost and what I was still carrying. Then one Saturday morning, as I walked into a cafe near my office, I saw her. Emma. She looked different, shorter hair, darker clothes, and a new tiredness around her eyes. But it was her. I froze, coffee half ordered, as she turned and saw me. For a second, time didn't move. Then she smiled, hesitant but real. "Hey, stranger." I walked over, heart pounding. "Hey, what are the odds?" she said, apparently not low enough. She laughed softly, that same old laugh. "Do you have a minute?" We sat outside, the cold autumn air sharp enough to sting. Her hands wrapped around her cup, like she was trying to warm herself from the inside out. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," I said. "I wasn't sure I wanted you to," she admitted. "But life has a sense of humor." We talked for a while, mostly small things. Work, the weather, Seattle. She'd come back for a few weeks to help her mom, who had been sick. There was no trace of the girl who had once run away from everything. This version of Emma seemed quieter, heavier, as if she'd seen something I hadn't. At one point, I asked, "Are you happy there?" She looked away. I thought I would be. But I keep realizing happiness isn't somewhere you move. It's someone you miss. I didn't respond. She took a breath. "Are you seeing anyone?" "Yeah," I said honestly. She nodded. "Is she good to you?" "She is." "Then don't mess it up." That should have been the end of it. A brief conversation, a quiet closure. But of course it wasn't. 3 days later, she texted, "Dinner? One last time?" I should have said no. Every rational part of me screamed that I should. But logic has never stood a chance against her. We met at a quiet bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where nobody knows your name. She was already there, waiting with 2 glasses of whiskey. "You remembered," I said. "Some things stick," she replied. We talked like no time had passed. The words flowed easily, the pauses felt familiar. At one point, she said, "You know, I always thought we broke up because of timing. But maybe we just didn't know how to love each other right." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we were too scared to admit we did." Her eyes softened. "Do you still think about us?" "Every day," I said. "But not the way I used to. It's more like a ghost story I tell myself when I can't sleep." She smiled sadly. "Then I guess I'm your ghost." We sat in silence for a while. The air between us was thick with all the things we'd never said. Finally, she whispered, "I miss how you made me feel safe. And I miss how you made me feel alive." She reached across the table and touched my hand. That single touch pulled every buried feeling back to the surface. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I almost forgot about Lily, about everything. But I pulled my hand away. "I can't do this again." "I know," she said, "but I needed to see if I still meant something." "You do," I said quietly. "You always will." She smiled, sad, knowing, final. "Then that's enough." When we walked out, the sky was beginning to snow. She stood by her car, her hair catching flakes of white. "This is goodbye, isn't it?" she asked. "It has to be." "Then promise me something," she said. "Don't spend your life waiting for something that already happened." I nodded. "You too." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, soft and cold. Then she got in her car and drove away again, the taillights fading into the snow until there was nothing left but silence. For a long time, I stood there watching the empty road. It felt like the world was closing a chapter one hadn't finished reading. When I got home that night, Lily was waiting. She looked up from the couch and asked, "Rough day?" I hesitated. "Yeah, just ran into someone I used to know." She smiled gently. "Must have been someone important." "Yeah," I said. "She was." Lily didn't ask more. She just reached for my hand and held it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. I just felt present. But later, lying awake in bed, I realized something. Closure isn't always about forgetting someone. Sometimes it's about finally accepting that the story ended a long time ago, even if your heart keeps rereading it. And yet, even knowing that, I could still hear her voice in the back of my mind, saying, "Don't mess it up." That was the last time I saw her for almost a year. But as I would later learn, endings have a strange way of pretending to be endings, until life decides otherwise. A year passed. Life found its rhythm again. I moved to a new apartment closer to work, got promoted, and things with Lily grew steady. Comfortable in a way that felt foreign at first but safe in the long run. She was the kind of person who believed in soft mornings, clean kitchens, and simple love. No drama, no games. Just presence. But comfort is strange. It doesn't erase what came before. It just makes the echoes quieter. I still caught myself scrolling through old photos sometimes. Not to torture myself, just to remind me that it all really happened. That she, Emma, wasn't some dream. Then, one Thursday night, it happened. I was sorting through my email, deleting junk, when I saw her name. Emma S. The subject line read, "In case I never say this out loud." My heart dropped. The date on the message was 6 months earlier. I had changed my email address after switching jobs, and this must have been forwarded automatically through my old inbox. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, cursor blinking. Then I clicked. It wasn't long, barely a few paragraphs. But every word felt like a heartbeat. "Hey, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the guts to send it when I wrote it. Typical me. I'm not reaching out to start anything again, I promise. I just need you to know something before it's too late. You were right. We were always scared. Scared of what would happen if it worked, not if it didn't. Because if it worked, that meant we'd have to admit we were everything to each other. And that kind of truth is heavy. I hope you're happy now. Really. You deserve someone who doesn't run when things get hard. Someone who stays. If I ever cross your mind, I hope it's in a good way. I hope it's a song, or a smell, or a city street that feels familiar. Thank you for being the chapter I'll never skip when I reread my life." I read it 3 times. The 4th time, I started to cry. Quietly, without warning. Not because I missed her, at least not exactly. It was more like grieving a version of myself that only existed when she was around. Lily came home while I was still staring at the screen. She looked tired but smiled when she saw me. "Hey, babe." "Hey." I closed the laptop too quickly. She frowned. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just work stuff." She nodded, kissed my cheek, and went to shower. I sat there, guilt clawing at me, because even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I felt like I had. That email had reopened something I'd spent a year trying to bury. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every word of Emma's message replayed in my head, especially the last line. "Thank you for being the chapter I'll never skip when I reread my life." I thought about replying, telling her I'd read it, that I forgave her, that I hoped she was happy too. But there was no address to reply to. The message had come from an old account, one that didn't exist anymore. It was like she'd sent it into the void, never expecting an answer. Over the next few days, I became quiet, distracted. Lily noticed. One night, while we were making dinner, she said, "You've been somewhere else lately. Want to tell me where?" I hesitated. She deserved honesty. "I got an email," I said slowly, "from someone I used to know." She looked at me for a long moment. Someone or her. I didn't answer. That was enough. She nodded. "Did you reply?" "No." "Do you want to?" "I don't even know if I can." She turned back to the stove, stirring the pasta, then said quietly, "You don't have to apologize. Just don't get lost in something that isn't real anymore." That hit harder than she knew. A few nights later, I drove out of the city, no destination in mind. I ended up at the old park by the water, the same place Emma and I had met the day she told me she didn't know what she wanted. The trees were bare now, the benches wet from rain. I sat there for an hour, phone in hand, staring at her name in my contacts. I'd never deleted it, just moved it to archive, as if that somehow made it safer. Eventually, I typed out a message. I got your email. I hope you're okay. Then I deleted it. When I got home, Lily was asleep. I crawled into bed beside her and lay there in the dark, wondering what it meant to love someone who was already gone, and to love someone else who was right there, but didn't have your whole heart yet. The next morning, I found a new email in my inbox. The sender's name stopped me cold. Emma's mom. It read, "Hi. I hope this isn't strange. Emma mentioned you once, years ago. I wanted to let you know she passed away last month. It was sudden, a car accident. I found your email in her old notes. I thought you might want to know." I reread it twice before I could breathe again. Then I scrolled down. Attached was a single photo. Emma on a mountain trail, smiling into the wind. She looked happy, free. I don't remember much of what I did after that. I just know I drove for hours that day, out of the city, out of myself, until the world blurred. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at her picture. I thought of her message, her laughter, every moment that had defined us. And then I realized, she hadn't really disappeared. She had just moved somewhere I couldn't follow. I whispered her name once, quietly. Not as a call, but as a goodbye. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Jake drove all night. The highway stretched endless through the Nevada desert, lit only by the pale glow of the dashboard and the occasional flare of a passing truck. His mind kept replaying the moment in the warehouse, the blue liquid spilling, the men with cold eyes and silent guns. He'd been in firefights before, but this one felt different. There were no sides anymore, just layers of deception. He reached the edge of a forgotten town at dawn. The sign said Ravens Cross, population 312. Most of the buildings looked abandoned. A single gas station sat near the main road, next to a diner that hadn't changed its neon sign since the 70s. Inside, the coffee was weak, but the Wi-Fi worked. He needed it. He pulled out his encrypted tablet and opened a chat window. Jake, looking for the Prophet. User, the Prophet's dead. Jake, then you won't mind if I bring him back. Pause. Then a new message appeared. Room 7. Silver Motel. 2 blocks north. Come alone. Jake left a few bills on the counter and walked into the rising heat. The Silver Motel stood crooked and sun-bleached. The sign buzzed faintly, half the bulbs dead. Room 7's door was open a crack. Inside, a man sat on the floor surrounded by monitors, cables, and a portable generator humming low. Thin, mid-40s, with restless eyes that darted between screens. "You shouldn't have found me," he said. Jake closed the door. "I wasn't looking. I was desperate." "Big difference," the man replied. "Name's Sam. Used to be the Prophet before they burned that identity." Jake dropped a flash drive on the table. "Encrypted Syntrex files. We need to know what they're hiding." Sam plugged it in. Lines of code flashed across the screens, cascading like rain. VX9. I've seen this name before. Neural lattice sequencing. They were developing bioadaptive nanotech. Bioweapons. Sort of. Not to kill, to control. VX9 rewires neural feedback. Imagine a serum that lets someone override a person's instincts. Turn fear into loyalty. Pain into obedience. Jake's jaw tightened. That's what the explosion was about. They lost control of a batch. Sam nodded. And if the samples survived, someone's going to sell them. VX9 doesn't just change people. It erases them. Jake felt the air go cold. Can you decrypt the rest? Already doing it. But if I dig too deep, they'll trace me. You'll have company before lunch. Jake handed him a burner phone. Then finish fast. I'll hold them off. Sam smirked. You always were the reckless type. Outside, Jake noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Engine running. 2 men inside. He didn't wait. He ducked into the alley, pulled his weapon, and moved between dumpsters until he had a clear angle. The moment the first man stepped out, Jake fired. One down. The other tried to circle around, but Jake hit the fuel line. The sedan burst into flames. He ran back to the motel. Sam was packing his gear. They traced me, he shouted. We need to move. Where's the data? Uploading to a dead server. I'll finish on the road. They jumped into Jake's car and tore out of town. Distant sirens wailed behind them. Hours later, they pulled off near a desolate rest stop. Sam's laptop beeped. Download complete. He turned the screen toward Jake. You're not going to like this. The decrypted files showed shipment records, patient logs, and a list of government contacts. At the top was a familiar name, Director Cole Matthews, Central Intelligence Agency. Jake stared in disbelief. Cole ran our division. Looks like he ran Syntrex too. Jake clenched his fists. He ordered us into that warehouse. He knew it would blow. Sam leaned closer. He's not cleaning up evidence. He's finishing the experiment. The file showed scheduled VX-9 transport to a covert testing site labeled Project Winterlight, due in 48 hours. Jake's phone vibrated. Message from Emily. Found the source. It's Cole. Meet me in D.C. He exhaled sharply. She's already on it. Sam looked uneasy. If she's in D.C., she's walking into a death trap. Jake started the engine. Then we better get there first. They drove through the desert night. Lights off. Moon hanging low over the ridges. Sam spoke quietly after an hour. You still trust her? Jake didn't answer right away. I don't know if trust is the right word anymore. But she's the only one I still believe in. Sam nodded slowly. Then pray she's still herself when you find her. VX-9 was never meant for enemies. It was meant for agents. Jake's hands tightened on the wheel. Explain. Sam looked out the window. Matthews planned to test behavioral override on trained operatives. People whose loyalty was absolute. If they could break that, they could control anyone. Jake finished. They drove the rest of the night in silence. By dawn, the skyline of Washington, D.C. shimmered in the distance. Jake parked near the outskirts, blending with commuter traffic. He called Emily, but the line didn't connect. Only static. Then a voice, distorted, filtered through. Jake Hunter, you're too late. The call ended. Sam looked at him grimly. He's got her. Jake loaded his weapon and checked his gear. Then he's got a problem. They moved toward the city as the sun rose behind them, spilling light over a world that had no idea what was coming. Washington looked deceptively calm. The city pulsed with its usual rhythm, suits, sirens, the low hum of power, but Jake felt every glance like a camera lens tracking his steps. He and Sam ditched the car 2 blocks from the Capitol, blending into the morning crowd. Jake wore a gray jacket and baseball cap, head down, while Sam typed rapidly on a compact keyboard connected to his phone. Where was the signal last traced? Jake asked. Sam squinted at the screen. East Building, Federal Complex. Officially abandoned since 2019. But the servers are live. Someone's using it as a relay hub. Jake's jaw set. That's where he's keeping her. They crossed into the district's older quarter, where glass towers gave way to brutalist concrete. The air smelled faintly of metal and rain. Security drones hovered above, quiet and precise. Jake's implant scanner pinged once. A restricted signal flickered on his display. Encrypted frequency, Sam muttered. Same protocol as VX-9 command units. Jake exhaled. Then Cole's inside. They reached the entrance. Heavy steel doors chained shut. Jake pried them open with a crowbar and slipped into the dark corridor beyond. The building was silent except for the hum of power from somewhere deep below. The walls were lined with old server racks, blinking faintly. Signals coming from sublevel 3, Sam whispered. But there's interference, jamming fields. Jake drew his weapon. Stay close. They descended a narrow stairwell. The deeper they went, the louder the pulse of electricity grew. Jake's ears buzzed with static. At the bottom, a reinforced door stood slightly ajar. He pushed it open and froze. Emily sat in a chair under a bright light. Electrodes traced down her arms. Her eyes were open but glassy. A man stood behind her, typing on a control panel. Cole Matthews. Jake raised his gun. Step away from her. Cole didn't turn. You're late, Jake. But I expected you. Let her go. She's fine. Better than fine, actually. VX-9 integrates perfectly. The emotional centers align, obedience pathways strengthen, remarkable. Jake took a step closer. You used her as a test subject? Cole finally faced him, calm and composed. She volunteered. Or rather, her subconscious did. You can't imagine how willing the human mind becomes when it stops fighting itself. Jake's hand shook slightly. You're insane. Cole smiled. No, efficient. We've built wars around loyalty, trust, betrayal. VX-9 erases all that. Imagine agents who never question orders, who never break under pressure. You were one of our best, but flawed. Too human. Jake fired. The bullet tore through Cole's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Alarms blared. Sam rushed to the terminal, frantically disconnecting wires. Jake, her neural nets linked to the system. If we pull the plug too fast, it'll fry her brain. Then fix it. Cole staggered up, clutching his wound, blood soaking his sleeve. You can't stop it. She's already part of the network. Jake kicked the gun from Cole's hand and pressed his boot to his chest. Watch me. Sam's fingers flew across the keys. Rerouting data flow, disabling uplink. 30%, 50. Emily stirred, whispering something faint. Jake knelt beside her. It's me. Stay with me. Her eyes flickered. Jake. Yeah, I'm here. Something's inside me. It's cold. I know. We're getting it out. Cole laughed weakly. You think love will override neuroscripting? How poetic. Jake slammed the console against the floor, sparks flying. 70%. Sam shouted. Almost there. The lights flickered. A low hum rose through the room, the network fighting back. The monitors flashed red text. Integration critical. System lockdown. Sam cursed. It's creating a feedback loop. Finish it. Jake shouted. 85. Emily gasped, body arching as the machine pulsed. Cole reached for a hidden pistol, but Jake caught his wrist and twisted hard. The gun clattered away. Tell me how to stop it. Jake barked. Cole smiled through blood. You don't. She does. Jake turned to Emily. You hear that? You can shut it down. Her breathing was ragged. How? Focus on me. On who you are. Don't let them rewrite it. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't feel where I end. Yes, you can. Remember when we first met? The rain, the bad coffee, that stupid neon diner sign? Her lips twitched. You spilled it all over yourself. That's right. You laughed for 10 minutes. That's real. That's you. Her pulse steadied. The monitors flickered. Sam looked up. 98%. She's overriding the system. Emily's voice grew stronger. I'm not yours to rewrite. A blinding flash filled the room. The machine sparked, the servers popped, and then, silence. The lights went out. Smoke curled through the air. Jake held Emily as her body went limp. Talk to me. She stirred weakly. Still here. He exhaled in relief. Cole lay motionless on the floor. Sam checked his pulse. He's alive. Barely. Jake looked around at the ruined lab. We can't leave him. Too much evidence. Sam nodded. I'll wipe the drives and set charges. You get her out. Jake lifted Emily carefully. She leaned against his chest, breathing shallow but steady. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, cold, cleansing. Sam emerged minutes later, holding a detonator. You sure about this? Jake nodded. Let it burn. Sam pressed the trigger. The building erupted in light and thunder, fire swallowing the dark. They stood by the curb, watching the flames. Emily whispered, Is it over? Jake didn't answer right away. I don't know, but he won't be controlling anyone again. She looked at him, her eyes tired but clear. You always said ghosts can't find peace. He smiled faintly. Maybe this one can. They turned and walked into the night, the city sirens already rising behind them. But somewhere, deep in the government's secure network, a single file blinked awake, labeled VX, 9_archive_rebuild. Yexi. Morning broke over Washington like nothing had happened. The streets filled again with commuters, the sky was pale blue, and the world kept moving. But in the quiet corners where the city's secrets slept, the echoes of the fire still whispered. Jake and Emily hid in a safe house 2 miles outside the district. It was a forgotten apartment above an old print shop, cracked tiles, dusty air, a single window facing east. Jake stood there now, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. His hands trembled slightly. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. Behind him, Emily sat wrapped in a blanket, her skin pale. The bruises on her neck had started to fade, but her voice was still weak. You've been pacing since dawn, she said softly. He turned. Couldn't sleep. Because of me? Because of all of it. He sat beside her. Cole's dead. The lab's gone. But I can't shake the feeling it isn't over. Emily's eyes were distant. It's not. Jake frowned. What do you mean? When I broke the system link, I saw something, not code, memory. Layers of data hidden behind the neural interface. He wasn't working alone. Jake leaned forward. Who else? She closed her eyes, recalling. A name, or maybe a designation. Helix Division. Global Funding. Independent Operations. VX-9 was just one branch. Jake swore under his breath. So this was just a test. Emily nodded. And I was the prototype. The room fell silent. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. Jake finally said, "We need proof. Without it, they'll erase everything." Emily pulled a flash drive from her jacket. "I made a backup before the explosion. Sam doesn't know. I didn't trust anyone." Jake took it carefully. "What's on it?" "Everything Cole had on VX-9 and Helix, but it's locked. Only opens if my neural ID matches the signature." "You sure you want to open it?" She met his eyes. "If we don't, they'll start again." He nodded once. "Then we finish this." They met Sam later that night in an empty parking garage in Baltimore. Rain fell in thin, icy lines, echoing off concrete. Sam's laptop glowed faintly under the dim lights. "You look like hell," he said when he saw them. Jake replied flatly, "We earned it." Emily handed him the flash drive. "Can you run it offline?" "Sure. But if there's a trigger, I can't guarantee it won't wipe itself." "Do it anyway." Sam inserted the drive. The screen filled with encrypted data, scrolling fast. He typed commands, muttering as he worked. Then the display stabilized, lines of text, maps, names. Jake leaned closer. "What are we looking at?" Sam's eyes widened. "Funding trails, black accounts, private labs in 6 countries. Helix isn't a division. It's an entire infrastructure. VX-9 was stage 1 of something called Project Continuum." Emily whispered, "Continuum?" Sam nodded. "Neural continuity. Not just control, replication. They're mapping human consciousness into code." Jake froze. "You mean?" "They're building digital copies of agents. People who can operate 24/7 without limits, fear, or conscience. And guess whose neural map they used to start?" Emily's breath caught. "Mine." The screen flickered suddenly. Sam frowned. "Wait, we're being pinged. Remote intrusion." "From where?" Jake asked. "Langley. CIA mainframe." Jake drew his weapon instinctively. "Shut it down." "I'm trying." Sam's fingers flew. "They're copying the archive. 60%, 70. Emily grabbed the keyboard. "Route it through my signal. Let them think we're transmitting from the coast." Sam hesitated. "That'll expose you." "I'm already exposed." She hit enter. The system blinked, rerouting. Seconds later, the data stream stopped. Sam exhaled. They took the bait. They'll hit the decoy server in Maine. Jake lowered his gun slowly. "We need to disappear." Sam nodded. "I can scrub you from the databases, fake IDs, new names. But it won't last forever." Emily looked at Jake. "Forever's a long time." 2 weeks later, they were in Oregon. A small cabin by the coast, wind howling through pine trees, the sea crashing below. Jake fixed a broken window latch while Emily brewed coffee on a rusted stove. "Feels almost normal," she said. Jake smiled faintly. "Almost." He watched her hands move, steady now, no tremor, no sign of the virus or code that once lived inside her. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked. "To the agency?" "No. To who we were before all this." He looked out at the waves. "Sometimes. But I don't think that version of us exists anymore." She nodded. "Maybe that's okay." He turned to her. "You really think we can live like this? Off-grid, pretending the world isn't still burning?" Emily handed him a cup. "Not pretending. Just resting. We earned a few quiet days before the next storm." Jake took the coffee, tasted the bitterness. "You think they'll come?" "They always do." The wind rattled the glass. He glanced at the laptop on the table, Sam's encryption tool still running diagnostics. Then, from the screen, a faint sound, static, then a voice. "Female. Calm. Synthetic. Agent Hunter. Agent Reed. You cannot hide. Project Continuum proceeds." Jake froze. "That's impossible." The servers were destroyed. Emily stared at the screen. "It's using my voice." The voice continued. "Your memories built the foundation. Your minds remain the key." The program closed itself, leaving only a blinking cursor. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sea outside roared louder, as if it too had heard. Finally, Jake said, "So what now?" Emily looked at him. Tired, fierce, unbroken. "Now we make sure they never use us again." She reached for his hand. He squeezed it hard. Outside, the wind carried their silence out to the cliffs. Two ghosts, bound by the past, walking again toward the fight that never ends, but this time, together. And somewhere, in a dark server farm beneath the desert, lines of code whispered awake. VX 9, reinitializing test subjects. 002 and 003 detected.